On the shores of the North Sea, where icy waves crash against jagged cliffs, stands the Skeld Lighthouse, a place shrouded in mystery, vanished keepers, strange symbols carved into its walls, and whispers that chill to the bone. This is more than just a story about a lighthouse. It's a mystery no one has dared to solve. Are you ready to uncover the darkness behind its shadow? Then stay tuned and brace yourself. On the shores of the North Sea, where icy waves crash against jagged cliffs, stands the Skeld Lighthouse. Weathered by time and storms, its crumbling facade looms like a monument to forgotten history. Built in 1865, the lighthouse was once a beacon of safety for sailors navigating the perilous reefs. Now it's a symbol of fear and the unknown. The lighthouse's designer, Sir Richard Elmsworth, was an eccentric figure known for his fascination with ancient cultures and esoteric symbols. Some said his work was inspired by old rituals and forbidden knowledge, claiming he used runes and mystical geometry in the lighthouse's design. According to local whispers, these symbols were meant to ward off something dark that had long haunted the island. Strange things began to happen almost immediately after the lighthouse was completed. The first keeper, Jonathan Harkley, disappeared without a trace just months into his tenure. His replacement, Edward Grayson, reported hearing footsteps echoing up the stairwell at night, though he was the only person on the island. Grayson left after 3 months, claiming he felt like a stranger in his own skin. By 1920, the lighthouse was abandoned. Every keeper who came to Skeld either left in fear or vanished entirely. Over time, locals began calling the island cursed. Fishermen avoided its shores, swearing they saw lights flickering in the lighthouse's windows, even though it had long been deserted. In one particularly chilling tale, a fisherman named George swore he saw a figure standing in the tower during a stormy night. "I can't explain it," he later said. "There was no one on the island, but I saw them clear as day." The next morning, he found the lighthouse empty. As decades passed, Skeld Lighthouse became more than just an abandoned building. It turned into a legend. Some claimed they heard voices calling their names when they ventured too close to the island. Others spoke of a biting cold that crept into their bones, no matter the season. Sir Richard Elmsworth's true intentions were never fully understood. After his death in 1871, his journals and blueprints mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind only rumors. One surviving letter hinted at his motivations. "The island itself demands protection. It is older than we know. If we fail to contain it, the world may come to understand things it was not meant to." These words fueled endless speculation. Some historians believe the island was a site of ancient rituals long before the lighthouse was built. Others dismiss the tales as exaggerations. But one thing remains certain: Skeld Lighthouse is not just a structure. It's a doorway to something far greater and far more terrifying. By the 1920s, Skeld Lighthouse was little more than a fading memory, its light extinguished, its purpose forgotten. Yet the tale surrounding it grew darker with every passing year. Locals avoided speaking of it openly, but whispers of strange happenings persisted. Some claimed the island itself rejected those who dared to stay. Others believed the lighthouse was a beacon, not for sailors, but for something far less human. The most infamous story from this period was about the Turner family. In 1901, Edward and Margaret Turner, along with their 2 children, decided to settle on the island. They dreamed of a simple life, raising sheep and fishing. Letters Margaret sent to her sister during their first month described the island as peaceful, but oddly unsettling. "The silence here isn't like anything I've ever known," she wrote. "It's as if the land itself is waiting for something." As the weeks passed, the tone of her letters changed. She mentioned hearing whispers at night, faint but persistent, seeming to come from the direction of the lighthouse. In her final letter, sent just days before their disappearance, Margaret wrote, "Edward saw a figure in the shadows near the lighthouse. It wasn't a man. We're leaving as soon as we can." When Margaret's sister arrived on the island weeks later, she found the Turner home abandoned. Dinner sat uneaten on the table, and the fireplace still smoldered, but there was no sign of the family. A search party scoured the island, but they found nothing, only the eerie quiet of an empty lighthouse. This tragedy cemented the lighthouse's reputation as a cursed place. Over time, amateur historians and thrill-seekers began to speculate about its true nature. In the 1930s, a group of archaeologists visited the island, hoping to uncover clues. They found strange markings carved into the base of the lighthouse, symbols that resembled runes, though their meaning was unclear. One archaeologist suggested the markings were part of a ritual meant to seal something inside the island. Another theorized they were an ancient language, a warning left by those who came before. But before the team could reach any conclusions, one of their members vanished. His colleagues left in fear, vowing never to return. In the 1960s, a group of university students attempted to spend the night at the lighthouse as part of a paranormal study. They brought cameras, recorders, and other equipment, determined to prove or disprove the stories. By morning, their boat was found adrift near the shore. All 5 students were alive but deeply shaken, unable to recall what had happened. The only usable recording captured a single, chilling phrase spoken in a whisper. "You shouldn't have come." These events only deepened the mystery of Skeld Lighthouse. Some dismissed them as hoaxes or exaggerated tales. But for those who had been to the island, the truth was far more unsettling. Skeld wasn't just a place. It was a force, watching, waiting, and utterly indifferent to human understanding. In 1972, Skeld Lighthouse became the focus of yet another expedition. This time, a group of young researchers from London, led by psychology graduate student Thomas Kingsley, set out to explore the island. Kingsley believed that many supernatural phenomena could be explained through fear psychology and environmental factors. Accompanied by his team, photographer Sarah Gray, electrical engineer Mark Barrow, and acoustics specialist Linda Hopkins, he hoped to document the truth behind the lighthouse's sinister reputation. Arriving on a misty morning, the group was struck by the eerie silence that surrounded the island. "It's like the air here doesn't move," Linda remarked as they unloaded their equipment. The team spent the first day setting up cameras and sensors around the lighthouse and inside its decaying walls. Mark worked tirelessly to restore power to the building, using a generator to fuel their devices. By nightfall, they were ready to begin their investigation. The first night passed uneventfully, though the team noted an unusual drop in temperature within the lighthouse. Linda recorded faint, low-frequency sounds that she initially dismissed as interference. However, as midnight approached on the second night, the cameras began to capture something inexplicable. On the staircase leading to the lantern room, a shadowy figure appeared. It moved slowly, as if ascending the stairs, then paused near the top, seemingly staring into one of the cameras. "At first, we thought it was a trick of the light," Sarah later recalled. "But it didn't move like light. It moved like it was watching us." The team decided to investigate. When they reached the staircase, they found no one there, but the thick layer of dust on the steps bore clear footprints. Barefoot, human-like, and heading upward. Thomas, though skeptical, couldn't deny the tension that gripped the group. "It felt like we weren't alone," he admitted in his journal. On the third and final night, everything went wrong. At precisely 3:47 a.m., all of their equipment failed simultaneously. Cameras, lights, and sensors shut down, plunging the lighthouse into darkness. Moments later, Linda reported hearing whispers, faint but unmistakable, coming from the basement. Against her better judgment, she went to investigate, taking a flashlight and a recorder. She never returned. The rest of the team searched for her desperately, calling her name, but their voices seemed swallowed by the oppressive silence. Finally, they decided to leave, hoping Linda had somehow made her way back to the boat. When they reached the shore, the boat was gone, drifting aimlessly in the distance. On board, they later found Linda's flashlight and recorder. The final recording captured her voice, panicked, saying, "They're here. They've been watching us all along." The disappearance of Linda Hopkins remains one of the lighthouse's most chilling mysteries. Afterward, Thomas Kingsley left academia entirely, his journal describing Skeld as a place that defies reason, where we are the intruders, and it is the observer. By the 1980s, the tales surrounding Skeld Lighthouse had turned it into a legend that few dared to confront. Its reputation as a place of fear and mystery grew stronger with each passing year. However, in 1981, a team led by Professor John Miller decided to challenge the myths with scientific rigor. Miller, a respected physicist with a deep interest in debunking paranormal claims, saw the lighthouse as an opportunity to apply reason and science to what he called a patchwork of folklore. Miller's team included sound engineer Paul Hansen, biologist Emma Rogers, and historian David Lee. Their goal was straightforward: use modern equipment to study the lighthouse and collect tangible data. They arrived on a clear summer morning, carrying an array of devices, including electromagnetic field meters, thermal cameras, and ultrasonic sensors. To them, Skeld was just an old structure with a few unexplainable quirks. At first, their findings were uneventful. Miller noted that the lighthouse's structure, while weathered, was surprisingly intact for its age. David discovered symbols carved into the stone foundation, runes that Emma suggested might be connected to ancient rituals. "These are unlike anything I've seen before," she said, running her fingers along the intricate carvings. "It's almost as if they were meant to be more than decorative." That night, the team set up their equipment and waited for something, anything, to happen. Around midnight, one of the motion sensors triggered an alarm near the staircase leading to the lantern room. The camera placed there captured a faint light moving upward, as if a lantern was being carried by an unseen hand. Paul was the first to respond, climbing the stairs with his flashlight. He found nothing, but the air felt unnaturally cold. "It wasn't just the temperature," Paul later recounted. "It was like the cold had a presence, pressing down on you." The next day, Miller focused on the runes, attempting to decode their purpose. He theorized that they might have been used in protective rituals, a hypothesis supported by Emma's research into local folklore. The carvings, she discovered, resembled those found on ancient altars in nearby settlements. "If these symbols were meant to keep something out," she said, "it's possible they're failing, or have already failed." On the second night, the team experienced their first undeniable anomaly. Thermal cameras captured a heat signature that appeared and disappeared within seconds on the second floor. The signature was roughly human-shaped, but far colder than the surrounding environment. "It's impossible," Miller muttered as he reviewed the footage. "Nothing alive could move like that." The third and final night brought the most unsettling events. As the team monitored their instruments, the temperature inside the lighthouse dropped dramatically. David, who had been sitting near the base of the stairs, reported hearing faint whispers, though he couldn't discern the words. "It was like a conversation," he said, "but it wasn't in any language I know." Then at 3:15 a.m., every device in the lighthouse simultaneously failed. The screens flickered and went dark, leaving the team in complete silence. Moments later, the lantern room began to glow faintly, its light growing brighter as the team stared in disbelief. "It's impossible," Miller whispered, his voice trembling. "There's no power source." The light lasted only a minute before vanishing entirely. The team decided to leave the island at first light. In his final report, Miller wrote, "We came here seeking answers, but we leave with more questions than ever. Skeld Lighthouse is not merely abandoned, it is alive, in its own incomprehensible way." Miller retired from research shortly after, leaving behind an enigmatic legacy. His work fueled further speculation about Skeld, but no one since has dared to stay long enough to find the truth. In 1997, Skeld Lighthouse once again drew attention, this time from an unlikely source, a young photographer named Andrew Collins. Known for his passion for abandoned places, Andrew was captivated by the lighthouse's history. He planned to capture its haunting beauty for an art exhibition, brushing aside the rumors of its cursed nature as little more than local superstition. Andrew arrived on the island early one October morning. A thick fog clung to the shoreline, muting the colors of the sea and sky. For him, it was the perfect atmosphere for photography. Armed with his camera, he spent the day exploring the lighthouse and its surroundings. The building's age showed in its crumbling walls and rusted metal, but the structure itself seemed remarkably intact. He climbed the spiral staircase to the lantern room and was greeted with a breathtaking view of the endless gray horizon. As night fell, Andrew set up his equipment to capture long exposure shots of the lighthouse's interior. Leaving one camera on a timer, he descended to the ground floor to review his work. That's when he first noticed something unusual. The camera, which had been fully charged earlier, was completely dead. Puzzled, he swapped out the battery, only for the new one to drain within minutes. Shrugging it off as a technical glitch, he continued his work. Around midnight, Andrew began to feel uneasy. He couldn't explain it. There was no sound, no movement, just a growing sense that he was not alone. His flashlight flickered as he made his way back to the central hall. There, he saw it. The heavy oak door leading outside, which he had locked earlier, was now slightly ajar. Outside, the fog seemed thicker than before, almost alive in the way it swirled around the building. Steeling his nerves, Andrew closed the door and bolted it. He told himself it was the wind, though deep down he knew that explanation didn't fit. Returning to his makeshift camp, he noticed footprints on the dusty floor, barefoot, human-like, and heading toward the staircase. He followed them with his flashlight, but they stopped abruptly halfway up the stairs. The rest of the night passed in tense silence. At dawn, Andrew packed up his equipment and left the island. Reviewing his photos later, he discovered something chilling. In one long exposure shot, taken in the lantern room, a shadowy figure could be seen standing near the window, gazing out at the sea. The figure was faint, almost transparent, but its presence was undeniable. Andrew never included the lighthouse photos in his exhibition. In an interview years later, he explained why. Skeld isn't just a place. It's watching you, waiting for you to notice it. I don't think I'll ever go back. Some things are better left unseen. His story reignited interest in the lighthouse, drawing both skeptics and believers into heated debates. But for Andrew, it was the end of his exploration. The memory of that shadowy figure haunted him long after he left, a reminder that not all mysteries are meant to be solved. In 2003, Skeld Lighthouse once again became the focus of intrigue when a group of paranormal enthusiasts decided to investigate its mysteries. Inspired by stories of the lighthouse's eerie past and armed with state-of-the-art equipment, they believed they could capture undeniable evidence of the supernatural. The team consisted of Emma Clark, a journalist with a passion for uncovering the unknown, her cameraman Richard Blake, sound engineer Dan Henderson, and twin sisters Anne and Laura Marsh, who specialized in documenting paranormal activity. The group arrived on the island early in the morning and began setting up their equipment. Cameras, motion sensors, and thermal imaging devices were placed throughout the lighthouse, covering every floor, including the lantern room. Dan, the group's technician, spent hours wiring the devices to a portable generator. "We're ready for anything," he joked, though his confidence would soon waver. The first day passed without incident, though the group noted the unnerving silence surrounding the island. As night fell, they gathered in the central hall to monitor their equipment. At 11:37 p.m., one of the cameras on the staircase picked up an anomaly, a faint, glowing light moving upwards, as if someone was climbing the steps with a lantern. Anne and Laura, eager to investigate, ascended the staircase, while the others stayed behind to watch the monitors. When the twins reached the top, they found nothing out of place, but Anne noted a strange chill in the air. "It was like walking through ice," she later described. "The kind of cold that feels alive." At midnight, the motion sensors on the second floor triggered an alert. The thermal camera showed a heat signature, vaguely human-shaped, but far colder than the surrounding environment. Richard captured the moment on video, his voice shaking as he narrated. There's something moving. It's right there, but it's not alive." The most terrifying event occurred at 3:00 a.m. when every piece of equipment simultaneously malfunctioned. The screens flickered and went dark, leaving the team in silence and near total darkness. Seconds later, a loud crash echoed through the lighthouse, as if something massive had fallen from above. Emma grabbed a flashlight and led the group to investigate, but they found nothing. When the equipment finally rebooted, the cameras revealed something chilling. On the footage, a shadowy figure stood at the base of the stairs, motionless. Its features were impossible to make out, but it appeared to be watching the group. The figure lingered for several seconds before vanishing without a trace. By dawn, the group decided to leave the island. Back on the mainland, they reviewed the footage and found another unsettling detail. On one of the recordings from the lantern room, a faint whisper could be heard. It was barely audible but unmistakable. "Leave," it said. The group published their findings, but none of them ever returned to Skeld. Emma later reflected on the experience, saying, "It's not just a haunted place. It's aware of us. It's aware of everything, and it doesn't want to be disturbed." By 2011, the legend of Skeld Lighthouse had become a favorite topic on forums dedicated to the paranormal. That year, a user posted a series of drone-captured images of the lighthouse. The photos quickly went viral. In one, a shadowy figure could be seen standing near a window on the second floor, while in another, strange beams of light seemed to emanate from the building, piercing the heavy fog that surrounded the island. The user claimed that the drone's camera had malfunctioned shortly after the photos were taken, and the drone itself became unresponsive, crashing into the rocky shoreline. The footage only fueled debates among skeptics and believers. Was this the definitive proof of the supernatural, or just a trick of light and shadow amplified by faulty equipment? No one could say for certain. Among those captivated by the images were three friends from Glasgow: Dan, Lucy, and Evan, avid explorers of abandoned and mysterious places. For them, Skeld Lighthouse was the ultimate challenge, a place where they could finally test their skills and perhaps solve a mystery that had baffled so many. They arrived on the island on a bright spring morning, carrying cameras, thermal imaging devices, and enough supplies to last through the night. As they explored the lighthouse, they were struck by how well-preserved parts of it were, despite its age. Lucy noticed something unusual carved into the stone near the base of the lighthouse, symbols resembling ancient runes. "These look almost fresh," she said, running her hand over the markings. "It's like someone's been maintaining them." Inside, the air was heavy and damp. They split up to set up their equipment. Evan positioned cameras on the staircase, while Dan and Lucy focused on the lantern room. In the basement, Dan found an old wooden chest covered in dust. The hinges were rusted, but with some effort, he pried it open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a leather-bound journal. The journal belonged to a former lighthouse keeper, dating back to 1871. Most of the entries described the monotony of daily life on the island, but the final pages were filled with desperate scrawls about shadowy visitors and voices in the dark. The last entry read, "They're here every night now, watching, waiting. I don't think I can stay much longer." As night fell, the team began their vigil. For hours, nothing happened, but shortly after midnight, the cameras caught movement on the staircase. A shadow, faint but unmistakable, ascended slowly toward the lantern room. Lucy suggested they check it out, but Evan insisted they stay together. "Whatever it is, it's better to observe it from here," he said. The shadow disappeared, but an hour later, their thermal cameras detected a human-shaped figure standing near the window in the lantern room. It emitted no heat. Dan tried to rationalize it, suggesting it could be an anomaly caused by the equipment. "Then why is it moving?" Lucy asked, pointing at the monitor. At 3 a.m., the tension reached its peak. The sound of faint whispers echoed through the building, though their source couldn't be pinpointed. The whispers grew louder, forming an unintelligible murmur that sent shivers down their spines. They decided to leave immediately. On the boat ride back to the mainland, they reviewed their footage. In the final clip, taken just before they left, a figure could be seen standing in the doorway of the lighthouse. Its face was blurred, its body barely solid, but it appeared to be watching them as they departed. Lucy later said, "I don't know what we saw, but it was aware of us. It didn't follow us, but it wanted us to know it was there." None of them ever returned to Skeld. In 2016, the Skeld Lighthouse once again made headlines, but this time it wasn't an expedition or a daring investigation that drew attention. It was a report from George Andrews, a local fisherman who had spent most of his life navigating the waters around the island. George wasn't one for tall tales, but the story he told left even the most skeptical listeners shaken. One evening, as George steered his boat back to shore, he noticed an unusual glow coming from the lighthouse. It was a clear night, he later recounted, and there wasn't a single light on the horizon, except for that one. It wasn't just a reflection or a trick of the eye. It was a solid beam of light coming straight from the top of the tower. What struck George most was the intensity of the light. It was sharp and bright, cutting through the surrounding fog with an unnatural clarity. He watched for several minutes, certain that no one had been to the island for years, let alone restored the defunct lighthouse. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the light went out, leaving the island in darkness. When George shared his story, it spread quickly through the local community. Others began to come forward, claiming they too had seen strange lights or heard faint, echoing sounds coming from the direction of the lighthouse. Some dismissed it as atmospheric phenomena or electrical interference, but those who knew the island's history weren't so sure. A small research team was dispatched to investigate, but their findings were inconclusive. The lighthouse was still abandoned, and there were no signs of recent activity or electrical power on the island. The team did, however, report a faint electromagnetic disturbance near the tower. "It's nothing out of the ordinary," their report stated, though it did little to quell the growing speculation. For weeks after George's sighting, the island seemed to hum with renewed mystery. Locals avoided the waters around Skeld, claiming the air felt heavier and the winds colder near its shores. Some said the light was a warning, others believed it was a sign of something awakening within the lighthouse. Whatever the explanation, George's account became another piece of the lighthouse's enigmatic puzzle. "I don't know what I saw that night," George later admitted, "but I know it wasn't meant for me. It felt like I was trespassing on something far older and far bigger than I'll ever understand." In 2018, a group of students from Durham University decided to visit Skeld Lighthouse as part of a short film project. They were drawn by the allure of the lighthouse's dark history, hoping to blend elements of fiction and reality to create an atmospheric piece. They arrived on the island one cloudy morning, carrying cameras, lighting rigs, and other film equipment. The day began uneventfully as they scouted locations and planned their shots. The lighthouse was as foreboding as they had imagined, its decaying walls and rusted fittings providing the perfect backdrop for their film. One student, Jason, noticed something peculiar while setting up a camera near the base of the tower. One of the windows, unlike the others, appeared to be free of dirt and grime, as if it had been cleaned recently. He pointed it out to the others, who dismissed it as a trick of the light or weather. As the day progressed, the weather worsened. By late afternoon, a thick fog rolled in, and the atmosphere became eerily still. The students pressed on with their filming, but several of them began to feel a growing unease. Jason, who was monitoring the footage, noticed that the cameras struggled to focus when pointed toward the lantern room. "It's like something's messing with the signal," he said, adjusting the settings. Despite his efforts, the image remained blurry. The real trouble began that night. The students decided to stay in the lighthouse to capture nighttime footage. They set up camp on the ground floor, leaving cameras positioned throughout the building. At first, everything was quiet, but around midnight, strange sounds began to echo through the structure. Soft footsteps coming from the upper floors. Nervous but intrigued, Jason and two others went to investigate, leaving the rest of the group to monitor the cameras. As they climbed the staircase, the sound seemed to retreat, always staying just out of reach. When they reached the top, they found nothing but silence and shadows. Back on the ground floor, one of the monitors suddenly went dark, When it came back online, the feed showed a faint shadow crossing the hallway. None of the students were near the camera at the time. Those watching the monitors immediately radioed Jason, urging him to return. "There's something here," one of them whispered. The night ended with the students abandoning the lighthouse before dawn. Reviewing their footage later, they discovered something chilling. In one clip, a dark, humanoid figure could be seen standing in the stairwell, staring directly at the camera. Its face was indistinct, but its presence was undeniable. The students never released their film, and the project was quietly shelved. "Some things aren't worth the risk," Jason later said in an interview. "Skeld isn't just a haunted place. It's alive, and it doesn't want us there." In 2020, the Skeld Lighthouse once again caught public attention when popular live streamer Tom Harper decided to spend a night on the island. Known for his daring challenges, Tom viewed the lighthouse as just another opportunity to entertain his audience. Armed with cameras, motion detectors, and a backpack full of snacks, he set out to uncover the truth, or at least put on a good show. Tom's stream began in the late afternoon as he explored the lighthouse. His viewers marveled at the decayed beauty of the structure, and Tom kept the tone light, cracking jokes about the so-called hauntings. But as night fell, the atmosphere shifted. The usual banter in the chat gave way to concerned messages as viewers began noticing odd things on the stream. Around midnight, one of Tom's stationary cameras captured movement on the staircase. A faint, shadowy figure appeared, ascending the steps before disappearing into the darkness. Tom, alerted by his viewers, nervously went to investigate. "Probably just a trick of the light," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. But when he reached the staircase, he found nothing. At 2:14 a.m., the stream abruptly cut out. When it resumed a few minutes later, Tom looked visibly shaken. "I don't know what just happened," he said, his voice low. He described hearing footsteps circling him on the upper floor, though no one else was there. The most chilling moment came near the end of the stream. As Tom packed up to leave, one of the cameras captured a fleeting image of a face in the lantern room window. It was pale, featureless, and gone in an instant, but it left viewers reeling. Tom never returned to the lighthouse. He left the stream online but refused to talk about the experience again. For his audience, the footage was undeniable proof that Skeld was far more than a derelict structure. It was something incomprehensible, something alive. In 2021, an unmanned military drone patrolling the coastline captured an inexplicable event near Skeld Lighthouse. The footage showed a bright, pulsating light emanating from the top of the tower, piercing the fog with an almost otherworldly intensity. The light lasted just over a minute before fading into darkness. When the footage was analyzed, it revealed something even stranger. Moments before the light appeared, a shadowy figure could be seen moving inside the tower. Its motions were slow and deliberate, almost like it was performing some kind of ritual. The military dismissed the event as a technical anomaly, but the footage was leaked online, sparking renewed interest in the lighthouse. Conspiracy theories flourished, with some claiming the light was a signal to another dimension, while others suggested it was an ancient warning system. Skeptics argued that it was merely a malfunction in the drone's sensors, but even they couldn't explain the figure. Locals reported seeing strange occurrences near the island in the weeks following the event. Some said they heard distant humming, while others claimed the air around the lighthouse felt unnaturally heavy. Whatever had happened, it seemed to leave a lasting mark on the island and its mysterious tower. By 2022, the Skeld Lighthouse was officially declared off-limits by the government. Fences were erected around the island, and patrols were stationed to ensure no one approached. The reason for the sudden restrictions was never disclosed, but rumors circulated that secret experiments had been conducted there in the preceding months. The last known account from the lighthouse came from George Andrews, the fisherman who had once seen its mysterious light. He claimed to have had a vivid dream in which the lighthouse was surrounded by glowing figures. In the dream, these figures raised their hands toward the sky as the lighthouse pulsed with an intense, blinding light. When George woke up, he found a handwritten note on his windowsill. It read, "Stay away." This final story cemented Skeld's reputation as a place beyond understanding. Whatever forces were at work there, they defied explanation. The lighthouse remained a silent sentinel, standing watch over its lonely island, guarding secrets that humanity was perhaps never meant to uncover. In this video, I put a lot of effort into editing and sound design to make the story engaging and immersive. I don't want my subscribers to watch low-quality content where the visuals behind the narration consist of just one illustration. I would really appreciate it if you shared your thoughts about this video in the comments. Every subscription motivates me to improve and do even better. Sincerely, the creator of the channel After the Fall.